You know that moment when it finally hits you, that the love you spent your whole life begging for was never actually real. For me, that moment came on Christmas Day. My sister got a brand new car. I got an envelope with debts my parents had taken out in my name. That was the day I stopped waiting for recognition and started building my way out. My name is Lauren, and this is a story of how I gave myself the one gift they never could: freedom. So settle in, grab your coffee, and come with me. I don't know if it was the sound of the paper tearing or the silence that came right after, but something in that moment broke inside me. The room was full of laughter, phone cameras flashing, the smell of cinnamon and turkey in the air. My parents were all excited with the gifts, like every shiny bow had a miracle tucked inside. I was the last in line at the tree, like always. I waited to hear my name. Then my mom handed me an envelope, plain, no ribbon, no sparkle. And right then, I felt humiliation crawl up my throat. It was quiet, but it burned. My younger sister got a car. A red SUV, brand new, parked in the driveway with a massive bow on top. She screamed, cried, hugged my dad, posed for selfies. Everyone ran outside like it was the Super Bowl finale. And I just sat there, clutching that envelope like it held something sacred. My fingers dug into the paper, trying to pull meaning out of it. My heart pounded, so loud it drowned out the music. I smiled, because I learned early on, if you don't smile, they call you ungrateful. I opened the envelope with shaky hands. 3 sheets inside, bills, old debts, ones my mom had taken out in my name. She had promised she'd pay them. Now it read, "Maybe you can figure something out. You're good with this kind of thing." I read it 3 times, thinking it had to be some sort of joke. My face flushed, my eyes burned, and outside, the family was still celebrating the princess and her new car. I got up, walked to the kitchen like I was going for more wine, closed the door slowly, leaned against the counter. I could still hear my sister's laughter echoing through the house like a song I no longer belonged to. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there, staring at the envelope, reading it over and over, trying to understand if this was really happening, if this was all I was worth. And suddenly, everything made sense. All those years being the steady one, the daughter who worked, who helped, who sacrificed, and her, she was the one who received. When I went back into the living room, no one noticed anything. My dad gave me a pat on the back. "Did you see how happy your sister was?" I nodded. My mom gave me a tired smile. "We always know we can count on you, sweetie." And that's when I finally understood. I was never the daughter who was loved. I was the emotional crutch, the financial babysitter, the adult since 17, invisible, useful, and somehow that was supposed to be enough. Dinner went on, and so did I, sitting there in silence, swallowing turkey and resentment at the same time. My sister raised a glass. To the best family in the world. Everyone cheered. I did too. The sound of my glass clinking was the only proof I was even still there. But inside, I was already leaving. Not the dinner table, but them. That night, when I got home, I placed the envelope on the table and stared at it for a while. The house was cold, quiet. I made a cup of tea, sat on the couch, and just thought about everything I gave up to be the daughter who held everyone else together. And now, they repaid me with this. A debt, a reminder that to them, I was a tool, not a heart. That night, something inside me shifted. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a dramatic scene. It was a quiet, sharp thought, like a knife that knows exactly where to cut. I don't owe anyone anything anymore. It wasn't rebellion. It was freedom. For the first time, I saw myself the way they saw me. And I made a promise to myself. That would be the last time I accepted so little. The last time I smiled to hide the pain. I turned off the lights with a quiet heart. But my soul was finally screaming. And this time, I was ready to listen. It was never just about the car. It was everything. It had always been everything. Since I can remember, my sister had a reserved seat at the table, in their arms, in my parents' hearts. And me, I always squeezed into whatever space was left. I remember her 7th birthday party, clowns, a bounce house, a 3-tier cake. 2 months later, on mine, they gave me a cupcake in the kitchen with a crooked candle. They said money was tight, that I'd understand. And I did. Too early! I learned that love, in that house, came with a label. And mine was missing. In school, she'd forget her lunch, and my dad would drive across town to deliver it. I forgot mine and learned to stay hungry. When she got bad grades, they hired tutors. When I got good ones, they'd say, "Well, that's what we expected from you." Eventually, I stopped sharing my wins. It didn't matter how hard I tried. Celebration was never for me. She cried, and the world stopped. I cried, and they told me to stop being dramatic. I grew up learning that my pain was inconvenient and my strength was expected. One day, I broke my arm playing volleyball. My mom arrived at the hospital annoyed, saying I should have been more careful, that she had to leave work for this. When my sister twisted her ankle at ballet class, she got flowers and a note on the mirror. "Feel better, sweetheart. You're our little star." I wasn't jealous. I was just tired. Tired of being the soldier while she got to be the princess. Tired of smiling for her, being proud of her, while no one even saw me. My parents used to say I was mature, that I was strong, that they never had to worry about me, as if that was a compliment, as if it was fair. But no one ever asks how the strong one is really doing. No one notices when the strong one breaks. I became good at fixing things, avoiding conflict, swallowing words before they became visible pain. Because the world taught me that silence was more welcome than truth. And I accepted that for far too long. When I got into college, it was thanks to a scholarship and 2 part-time jobs. I slept on buses, ate cheap noodles, turned in papers at 3 a.m. She didn't even finish high school properly and got a fully paid trip abroad. "She just needs a chance, you know," they said. Chance. That was her magic word, one I never got to say out loud. While I climbed every rung, she was lifted to the top without asking. And somehow, I was still painted as the bitter one. The first time I seriously thought about leaving was when she got an old car from our dad. I didn't even have a license, never had the money. They told me, "You don't drive anyway, so what's the point?" The point was simple, to be remembered, to be seen. I didn't need an expensive gift. I just wanted someone to look at me like I mattered, too. But asking for that felt like asking for rain in the desert. I had to keep being the responsible one, the one who gets it. Sometimes I'd wonder if it was all in my head. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe it was just jealousy. But then Christmas would come. Birthdays. Family photos where I was either holding someone's coat or taking the picture. And I knew it wasn't in my head. It was real. It was a pattern. And the more I tried to earn my place, the less I seemed to matter. My mistake was thinking I had to earn what should have been given. Fair love. But in that house, love had a last name, and it wasn't mine. Deep down, I held on to this foolish hope that one day someone would pick me, not out of duty, not out of guilt, but because they saw value in me. Maybe that's why the envelope hurt so much. Because it wasn't just paper, it came wrapped in years of things I tried to ignore. It was the official stamp of a truth I had refused to face. I was never the priority, never the celebrated daughter, just the necessary one, the one who serves, the one who pays, the one who holds the weight. And now, I didn't want to hold anything anymore. Not the pain, not the family, not the lie. They didn't notice I was gone because they never really noticed when I was there. After that Christmas, I stopped replying in the family group chat. I didn't say I was busy. I didn't offer excuses. I just stepped back. And the saddest part, no one asked why. No call. No, "Hey, are you okay?" Just recycled good morning emojis, forwarded recipes, and inside jokes I was never part of. For the first time, silence wasn't forced on me, it was mine. And strangely, it hurt less than being ignored in a room full of people. Going back to work after the holidays felt like coming up for air. My coworkers asked how my Christmas had been, and I smiled with that polished autopilot we learn when we're used to surviving. It was good. Quiet. They didn't know about the envelope. Or the mug. Yes, because to make sure I didn't leave empty-handed, my mom had thrown in a mug, wrapped in a plastic bag, with a little red heart on the front. Funny, right? I couldn't even fake a laugh. I just tucked it into an imaginary drawer where all my swallowed feelings lived, far from breaking down at my desk. I started walking more. It was winter, but I preferred the bite of cold on my face over the suffocating heat of my apartment. There was a little cafe, hidden between two old brick buildings. No one knew me there. And that was perfect. I'd order the same tea every time, sit by the window, and just exist. Couples fought quietly outside. Kids kicked snow across the sidewalk. And I sat there with a blank notebook and no urge to write. Just being there was enough. It was the one place where no one expected anything from me. I started thinking about things I never let myself think before. What if I just left? What if I really cut ties, like cutting the last thread in a noose? Part of me felt guilty just imagining it. Good daughters don't walk away, they say. Grateful daughters forgive. But what about daughters who were never really loved? What are they supposed to do? Settle for scraps because at least you have a family? I didn't want to be loyal to pain anymore. I wanted to be loyal to myself. For the first time, that same week, another bill arrived. Same envelope. More interest. I took a deep breath and called my mom. I told her I wasn't paying it. She sounded shocked. But sweetheart, it's in your name. I said, exactly. And I never agreed to it. She hung up without saying another word. No explanation. No apology. And that was it. That moment made something painfully clear. They knew what they were doing. They always had. They just didn't care enough to change. I was useful until I stopped being convenient. I started saving money. Tiny amounts here and there. Didn't tell anyone. Opened a new bank account. Changed my passwords. Updated my resume. Stayed quiet. But inside, I was already moving. Every small step was a door opening inside of me. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was emotional survival. Self-care in a language no one had ever taught me. I was becoming my own exit plan. My own protection. One Saturday, I sat in that cafe with a blank sheet of paper. At the top I wrote, "What do I want out of my life?" It sounds silly, but I had never really asked myself that before. The paper stayed empty for almost an hour. Then I finally wrote, "I want to be remembered, not out of obligation, not because I did everything right, but because I'm someone, because I exist, because my story matters, even if it means walking away from people who've spent a lifetime telling me, without words, that I didn't." As I left, the cafe owner smiled and said, "We like when you come in. It's peaceful when you're here." I thanked him, swallowing a lump in my throat. It was the first time in so long that someone said my presence made things better. And right then it hit me. Sometimes, the bonds that heal us don't come from blood. They come from the unexpected, from the new. And I was ready for that. Ready to leave behind what was never truly mine. And for the first time, not missing it felt like relief. Not pain. Sometimes, growing up means letting go of what never came. And building what you were never given. After weeks of silence, I started feeling lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because it finally had a name. I no longer expected my mom to call. I didn't wait for my dad to apologize. I stopped checking the family group chat. I simply stopped belonging to that space. And in the empty space it left behind, something unexpected grew, peace. Not loud, not easy, but real. And mine. At work, I started standing out without even trying. A project I'd picked up by chance ended up becoming a reference. My boss called me into his office, said he was impressed by my organization, my delivery, my strategic thinking. For the first time, someone saw me as more than the one who holds things together. I smiled genuinely, not because I was craving recognition, but because it felt good to hear that my presence mattered. Not because I pleased, but because I existed. I was invited to present an idea at a board meeting. I wore a new shirt, Not expensive, but one that made me feel whole. I walked into the room with a racing heart and steady feet. I presented like I was telling my story, because in a way I was. A part of me was in that room, in what I had built with effort. When I finished, one of the directors looked at me with something rare respect. "You've got a future here, you know," she said. I almost cried, because it was future, not past, and it was mine. I went home that night with a strange feeling, a kind of pride that didn't rely on anyone else. I made a simple dinner, opened a cheap bottle of wine, sat on the porch and took a deep breath. I, who had always been the caregiver, the forgotten sister, the woman who holds it all, was now just me, and surprisingly, that didn't scare me. For the first time, being just me didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like independence, a fresh start, the seed of something I didn't even have a name for yet. I started taking care of myself. Little things. I put fresh flowers on the table, got health insurance, picked up painting again just for fun, called an old friend I hadn't seen in years, met her for coffee. I allowed myself to say no when I was tired, and yes, when I wanted company. I didn't have to explain anything to anyone, didn't ask for permission. I just lived. Outside the family script, I was finally improvising. And for the first time, life had color. Color that didn't need anyone's approval. One day, my sister texted me. A heart emoji. A selfie with her car. No question about me. No, I miss you. And that's when I realized she had no idea anything had changed. Because in her mind, I would always be there. Always come back. Always carry. But this time I didn't reply. Not out of anger. But because for the first time, I had nothing to prove. I didn't need to explain my absence. It was finally my right. Some nights I still cried. Not for the new wounds, but for the old ones. For the birthdays I was forgotten. For the moments I wanted comfort and got guilt instead. For all the versions of me that bent to meet everyone else's expectations. It was grief. A quiet grief for someone still alive. But those tears no longer held me back. They cleared me, healed me. They were part of the process, part of the woman I was becoming. Steady, calm, intense, free. One Friday afternoon, walking home from the cafe, I saw a flyer on a public board, free courses offered in the community center. One was about entrepreneurship. I grabbed it without thinking. But deep down, I knew it was time. Time to build something of my own. Not just financially, but emotionally. A project where my voice would be heard, where my ideas had space, where my name would be spoken with pride. And if no one had ever given me that, then I would give it to myself. I didn't have much, but for the first time, what I had was real. It was mine. And that was the beginning of everything. It wasn't a scream. It was a choice. And when choices are made in peace, they hurt less than you'd think. It was a clear skeet Sunday. I brewed a strong coffee, played something soft in the background, and sat down with a blank sheet of paper. It wasn't a farewell letter. It was just the truth, written for the first time without fear. Maybe it was a note to myself, or maybe it was a release. I wrote slowly, like I was cleaning out an old drawer. Short sentences, clear, painful, but honest. I can't keep pretending that being ignored is normal. That was the first line. Then came, I did everything I could to be enough. But this was never about me. It was about where you chose not to see me. With every paragraph, a weight lifted from my chest. There was no anger, only exhaustion, only the quiet realization that the love I kept looking for never existed for me, not the way I needed it to. And that's okay. Not every bond is sacred. Not every family is home. I folded the paper, slipped it into an envelope, just like the one from Christmas. On the front, I simply wrote, "For you." Then I packed a box, filled it with photos, memories, and that mug they gave me. I sealed it with tape, drove to my parents' house, and left it on the porch, like returning something that was never really mine. I took one last photo, not to hold on to nostalgia, but to remember that I had the courage to walk away, without having to scream. I came home with empty hands, but a heart so full it shocked me. I breathed deep, locked the door, muted the family group chat, archived the photos, blocked the contacts. Then I cried. A lot. Like I was burying the part of me that begged for scraps of love. But I smiled too, because for the first time, I knew exactly where their pain ended and where my freedom began. It was hard, but it was right. It was necessary. At work that Monday, someone asked how my weekend had been. I said, liberating. They didn't get it, but that was fine. Freedom doesn't need applause. It needs resolve. And I had it now. I started making bigger plans. Courses, investments, dreams I'd shelved for years that now seemed possible again. For the first time, my energy wasn't being drained trying to fix broken ties. It was focused on me, on what I wanted, what I deserved. A few weeks later, I got a text from my sister. Haven't heard from you. Mom's worried. I read it and left it on read, not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. If they wanted to know how I was, they should have asked before, not after I left everything on their porch. The truth is, to people who've never really listened, even silence is too loud, and I wasn't going to repeat myself. To those who never cared to hear me the first time. One night, I dreamed I was back in that Christmas living room. Same tree, same laughter, same car with the giant bow. But in the dream, I was just a shadow in the corner, and no one noticed. I woke up at peace, because now I knew I wasn't that shadow anymore. Not ever again. The girl who waited to be chosen, she was gone, and in her place, a woman was being born. Alone, but whole. No more asking for permission. No more borrowing love. One afternoon, I stopped by the cafe, left a generous tip with a handwritten note. Thank you for making me feel seen when no one else did. The owner smiled, a little confused. But that was the point. Little things heal. Small moments save. And sometimes, home isn't a place. It's a feeling, a good memory, a person who really sees you. And I was finally building that. A home inside myself. I had no roots anymore, but no chains either. And that was all I ever needed. This time, I didn't wait to be called. I said my name out loud, and it echoed just for me. I started signing my emails with my full name. No nicknames, no hiding. I hung a small frame on the wall of my new room. It read, "You are enough." And every morning before I walked out the door, I'd look at it and take a deep breath. It was simple, but it reminded me of something I had spent my whole life forgetting. I didn't need to shrink myself to fit into anyone's world. I was my own space. The entrepreneurship course sparked ideas. I brought back an old project I used to dream about. Custom stationery, letters, quotes, messages, handmade, slowly with care. What started with a few notebooks turned into a little online shop. Each order felt like a note from the universe saying, "I see you." And every thank you message from a customer, it felt like they were speaking to something deep inside me. It wasn't just about selling. It was about being seen, about finally existing in someone's present. Until one day I existed in my own. One random Saturday, I got a message from a woman who bought a planner. I opened it today and cried. I felt something I hadn't in years, hope. I sat there in silence, read it once, then again, and I cried too, because deep down, that was all I had ever wanted. Not to be famous, not to be the perfect daughter, just to be someone who leaves behind something beautiful, even without a spotlight. And in that moment I realized, maybe I never had a family that applauded me, but now I had a life that embraced me. A year had passed since the Christmas of the envelope. I never went back, never called, no one reached out, and strangely, that didn't hurt anymore. Some pain, when left unfed, simply dies, not because it never existed, but because you learn to live without it. I no longer needed family portraits. I had new photos now, friends who showed up, clients who inspired me, a routine I had built with lightness, and a peace no one from back there could take away. Walking through the city now felt different. I walked slower. No rush. No running from anything. I knew where I was, and I knew where I was going. That alone felt like a miracle. Because for years, I'd rushed to avoid feeling, to avoid thinking, to avoid remembering that maybe the love I wanted never lived in that house. But now, I knew. I knew healing love starts from within, and I was caring for myself, with flowers on the table, with quiet nights, with truth, with boundaries, with freedom. One rainy morning, I went back to my usual cafe. The owner brought me my tea before I even ordered. The usual, right? I smiled. It was such a small thing, but it moved me. Someone knew me without explanation. Someone saw me. As I left, he said, "I think you brighten this place, you know." I froze for a second. That was it. To be remembered, not out of need, but out of presence, out of essence, out of being. I thanked him, my eyes a little wet. And in that moment, it was worth more than any Christmas present ever could be. I went home and wrote a letter. Not to my family, to myself. You survived years of being forgotten. But now you bloom by remembering yourself. I signed it with my full name, and I stared at it. For a long time, I hated that name. I thought it was a synonym for being invisible. But now, it was a symbol of strength, of new beginnings, of belonging. I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a woman. I was a story. I framed the letter and hung it beside the old quote. A new chapter, next to the reminder that got me here. No golden ribbon, no Christmas tree, but there was light, there was meaning, there was everything I needed to move forward. And moving forward now was a choice, not an escape, a path, not a punishment. It was the sound of my own voice, finally heard, and this time, I was the one choosing to stay, because I learned to never walk away from myself again. If this story touched you in any way, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this. And if you'd like to support me in continuing to tell them, you can buy me a coffee. The link is pinned in the first comment below. Every cup helps me keep bringing you more stories.